Thank you so much, Joey. Darby Minott Bradford, did I get that right? Yes, is a poet and translator based in Tio'tia, also known as Montreal. We all know now about the exciting recent GG nomination for A House Within a House, but I have to tell you that their first book, Dream of No One But Myself, was a finalist for the Griffin Poetry Prize and the Governor General's Awards, and won both the A.M. Klein Prize for Poetry and the Gerard Lampert Award. It didn't win it? Oh, well, 3 nominations and 1 win is pretty darn good. Very impressive. So we have high expectations for Bottom Rail on Top, Darby. This is their second book. About what I would like to just read a little bit about the book itself. Somewhere in the cup between Harriet Jacobs and surveillance, Southampton and sneaker game, Lake Providence and the supply chain, Bottom Rail on Top sets off a mediation between the complications of legacy and selfhood, and a kind of archives-powered unmooring of the linear progress story. Award-winning poet Deanne Bradford, fragments and recomposes American histories of antebellum Black life and emancipation, and stages the action in tandem with the matter of their own life. Please put your hands together for Deanne Bradford.
Sometimes, oh, I forgot that there was a stream. Oh, it's interesting. Sometimes you forget that, that you wrote copy for the book, and you're like, oh, right, the copy explains what the book is. Yeah. I'll have to do some more explaining, but it's a nice surprise. So I figured I would read just one little thing from Nicholas's book, From House Within a House, just because translation doesn't get a lot of shine in the world. It kind of, it's rare. And this book has gotten a couple of things going for it, so I figured why not. And then I'll read just one poem from Dream of No One But Myself, just a poem from my ma, partially because I'm feeling nostalgic for a book that I can just read cold and say nothing. And then I'll get into Bottom Rail on Top. The living room, I say, room of books and glass, sala abierta al mundo, an empty room. Dia tras dia, appalled, I fear its pains and comforts. The living room, I repeat, Guerrero. I make my way to it crawling, first on my stomach, then on my back. If at least the parquet became water, the ceiling, the sky, I could drift along, pero mi maldita cabeza bangs into the teepee. I'd like it, I repeat, if the living room caved in on me. Nothing moves, nothing collapses, ni siquiera mi caneo now smushed against the screen. The living room, a cruel stillness, its light spread over its unoccupied surfaces, its ceremonial Bibles, its reflections and images, its chassis, statues, and gravestones. The living room, waiting room, remainder. Nocturno, dia tras dia, this is where I give up. The sala de esta empties my head and covers it in dust. It's a book mostly, I guess, about depression, but kind of queerness and diaspora. Nico was born in Chile and then came to Quebec as a kid, and creativity, I guess, and how it kind of weaves all those other pieces together and gets you through. Where did I put that book? There we go. Un vent pour écorner les bœufs. And she keeps saying it's all this time been her mother's. as inventing or vain, an encorn, less for corning and in vain, or cornered bowing for a corned beef, a wind, for dehorning steers. She said it again and again, and now I hear it by myself down Palmerston. She said an acorn biffing, I hear it blow down Euclid. Events by corn and hoofing, by laundry up Clinton, by gust and howling to keep pace with. Metzitka cut, she'd call me. My petite cup of tannins pitting the storm drains. My personal fruit for another shorter day. The stream, hello to the people in the stream, reminds me of there's this, well, it's like a gay strip club in Montreal that hosts poetry readings every once in a while. And I do a reading there every once in a while, maybe like twice a year. And every time I forget that there are mirrors at the back. And so you have to get all the way up there and then it's just like mirrors. And you're like, this is strange, but I'm into it. I can work with that. Okay, so bottom row on top. The copy explains some of it. So I feel like there's the past, the big capital H past, and then there's us over here, and then there's a lot of weird stuff that happens in between. And in a lot of cases, there's lots of stuff that people that are trying to record and track and kind of get the right story, quote unquote, are, you know, doing that work and making emotional choices. There's a real kind of emotional life to the way history is recorded. And sometimes faked, right? And in my own life, the kind of cultural imaginary that dominates that kind of reach for history is very much a Black American one. My dad grew up in Philadelphia, his mother in New York before that. And I was very much raised with that kind of like cultural history in mind in a very mainstream way. And this book was, in a sense, me returning to all of that with a couple of maybe more radical ideas and thinking about these narratives that dominate, thinking about the ones that maybe belong in the picture a little bit more, and thinking about all of that together, thinking about other people in the present that are mediating that and grappling with that on their own. And kind of going back and forth, yeah, between that space of digging through the archive and then, you know, my body here in the present, which is experiencing maybe some echoes with some of the stuff I'm unearthing, but also some massive contrasts, right? Like this life at the tail end of the supply chain is a comfortable one. Even when there's like elements of subjection that we're also dealing with in our lives. So it's about all of those things kind of together, the experience of trying to make sense of it all, in a sense. So I'm going to get right into it. I'm going to start in the present and work my way back. This is called Deus Hos. Not a poem, but my studious pain is so dark and romantic. Not a poem, but so hot and angelic, taking me out on the town in my Tasmanian teal down endowment. My very own Patagonian fill is the absolute warmest kindling of guilt. Not a poem, but oh so loftily, where I might live a long time while pretty, ashamed, and jobless. Not a poem, but passing more roughage than a water closet and this holy commode that still don't fray. Calls the buildup architectonic, calls this strain a shift. Not a poem, but a savor in severance. I might never be done fucking with. Not a poem, but a big house is a big house. Imagine I'm standing in one being told every brick that makes it up was made on site by children. It said children did not look like me and kept the fire going around the clock. Imagine the tour guide announcing all this, dressed to look like the mistress of the house. Someone helps dress her in the morning, pile the whole thing on, button it up the back. Or there's well-placed Velcro and she does it on her own. Either way, imagine there's a sound just outside the window and clinking like bricks. And she imagines children stacking them. And then every day she talks about the bricks. Every day she impresses it upon us that the walls are 3 bricks thick. Every day I'm out here, I'm wearing selvage denim, Horween leather boots, cotton tops from unknown places. And every day since, I stay impressed because here are the details. Here she is pointing her ruffled sleeve at the enslaver's will's list of properties, whatever you call such a thing. Here it says 4-poster mahogany bed frame, $30. Here it says D'Iberville, 34 years old, $1,200. Here everything was made by the enslaved, and so here everything made is worthless. Apart from the means to make them. Here Miana, quote, mulatto seamstress, unquote. And her 2 boys and 3 girls were worth 2.5 times as much as the 15 cart horses, worth 50-odd beds. The things remain, the people don't. I pout my way through the gift shop. I wish I knew what I ordered for lunch. I wonder how many folks around Vacherie know about the name of their town. I assume there were cows down here. But for those of us who speak the language now, the first thing Vacherie brings to mind is a gratuitously crappy thing, like a pile of shit out by the levee. It gives cows a bad name. Ashes too. Not a poem, but a turtle back off Monkland. River just about hid the island frosted now and again. What I might scrub, can to can't, see right off myself. Not a poem, but my wintering in ash, my shed in vanity, a light, never soft spoken. Not a poem, but my Liberté cottage cheese tub, a Viva cold pressed coconut and fine Lantic silk, my ass smelling like a fish. Not a poem, but takes leave of my flake, granulated clean, scaled on the cheap, from across a whole ocean. Not a poem, but what a simple treat. What softly remains, my merest skin. Not a poem, but non-hydrogenated, the best part of waking up, click, click. So this next piece I'm going to read, I'm going to try to read it in stages. So there are all these little notes at the bottom that relate to whatever's going on the page, and they're kind of just like a peek into the research, and you could kind of take those and plug them into Google and kind of see where my mind was at, see where I went, and kind of follow it down a rabbit hole a little bit. And that's one experience on the page, but out loud, I've done it out loud with other people and do a kind of polyvocal thing, but for today, I figured I'd just do it on my own. And for this one, I'm going to work my way through the notes at the bottom first, and then I'll come back to the poem, and then I'll go into the prose. Loophole. I should also say this is about Harriet Jacobs. Does anybody know Harriet Jacobs? She wrote this now somewhat famous slave narrative that was kind of gone for years and then unearthed again in the 1970s by a scholar. And it has been written a lot about in like Black theory and Black studies since, largely around the fascination that she spent 7 years in like her grandmother's attic, hiding from her enslaver. But there's a lot more to the story than that. And also the story comes in her own voice. Everything we know about it is in her own voice. And there's this element of not, I think, accepting the complication of her agency, right? Like what we know about her is what she presented. So this is a piece about that in a sense. Not a poem, but if we think of the quote unquote flesh as a primitive narrative, H. Spillers. Not a poem, but that's it, honey, F. Gage. Despite my fantasies of flight, Elf Wilderson, between a hawk and a buzzard, M. Robinson. Not a poem, but seared, divided, ripped apartness, riveted to, Spillers again. An in-between location, M.A. Green Bartit. Not a poem, but an oh, Christian mothers, my own way to obtain it, page 155. Not a poem, but neither the brain or talent to write it, 1853. It put a lucky thought in my head. Not a poem, but as good as comedy to me. Not a poem, but made to render them a service, defeat the object I wish to pursue. Not a poem, but where no eye but God's could see me. Not a poem, but what made me think it was you, and the omission of 1 or 2 passages, the editor. Not a poem, but an assurance of repetition, whispered through a crack. Not a poem, but territory that defies all laws. She has not told the half. Loophole. Not a poem, but alive still. Not a poem, but don't get lost. Pled and poured over, ain't eyes as the hold and still. Not a poem, but Garrett the breastwork. Sojourn the bulwarks, gin a cotton fatherlands prying in and still. Not a poem, but Harriet's writing about Linda in the shed's crawl space, listening for her kids. Not a poem, but who writing her 7 years, sewed by shingle light, 1 hole by gimlet, 2 little faces floating in. Not a poem, but cunning versus cunning. Not a poem, but notes for the flinting nook scrawled in reps. Not a poem, but patient in tribulation, fervent in spirit. Not a poem, but serving the Lord, none but the one writ fatherland's croak out Aunt Martha's attic. Not a poem, but till the cut breaks, wrote with a prayer, led out of the darkness. Wrote faint of body, strong of purpose. Not a poem, but to write at last, past the old place, one last time. By boat, the breeze, and the sunshine. North by fatherlands, 10 days and 10 nights. Not a poem, but the problem of proneness. Not the aftermath of her proneness, of Harriet's forever messed up body carrying those cramped years of hiding in the family garret, hiding from doctor enslavement. Not the problem of its likeliness either, of Harriet Beecher Stowe, for one, who wouldn't believe any of her story at first, and asked her northerly employer, of all people, to confirm it. The story she wasn't liable to start writing till her grandmother, Molly, her story's Aunt Martha, passed back in Everton. But I mean the problem of the story some of us have tried to figure that crawl space is, the scrawl in her head, the desperate quiet to keep up the whatevers between them. The whole while not just bearing fruit and subterfuge, one letter at a time. Not just the mess of covert exercises taking her frame to the future in a little sail ship headed north, back together, planning forever, dear readership. Not just prone as I am writing this, not just the irony of writing her mouth shut, not just the telling fact of that other Harriet's refusal to write the books forward, but the lot of those inclined to imagine her years in hiding as prone as Winslow Homer's The Gulf Stream maroon, her toes tucked up on a drifting bit of boatwood, sharks circling as thick as the water, before they imagine her after, prone as Carrie Jane Marshall's Gulf Stream weekender sailors, given to leisure, almost whimsical, loaded and well. When she's only really as prone as if she's at once the maroon and the sailors, and she's also Marshall and Homer, and she's also more work to come. She's also the sun coming up. She's also watching it come up, writes it down on free soil. I'm unsure how she enjoys the work, but the work gets done. This next one is called Run, and I'll just say that there's a bunch of aggressive words in it. They're not aggressive, but they're out there, you know, they kind of jump at you a little bit, and they're all from the Nike website from the winter of 2019. All of, because you can't have yellow shoes on the Nike website, they have to be lime last, you know, that kind of thing. So Run. Not a poem, and yet the good goddess of victory cuts max, wants my cut flex, my cut epic, momentous shod of a habit. Not a poem, yet wants it cut free, wants my RN cut odyssey, cut react, wants my cut zoom clip, my shield cut remedy. Full-blooded and cut legend, frolic, cut flyknit, off noir, cut summit, gainful as my raw cut, lime blast, gate. Not a poem yet wants my cut ultra, my tight vapor cut, phantom king dry fit, every dark citron stride. Not a poem yet reveals my cut rise, cut air, whole ponied in my cut turbo, all black, Pegasus 35s. To be seen, cut fly, at home, size my swoosh, a few feet outside, every step of me. Just do it. The bits leave behind. So I'm gonna read this bit of prose that ends the section about, there was a lot of rhetoric, and Frederick Douglass was kind of a person that he came from in a lot of instances, around essentially getting Black men to enlist in the war effort with the Union Army. And a lot of the rhetoric was around essentially an equality that wasn't really going to happen, and also essentially patriarchy, just like, do you want your wife and children to respect you and think you're actually a man? And this little piece of prose is kind of boiled out of a number of things he said. Not a poem, but if better soldiers never shouldered a musket, when if freedom, if theirs by the sword, and patience, if by a common origin, common glory tardy, a common language cold, if a common literature dull, indifferent, mysterious properties. Seems it only took 1,000 or so Black soldiers to truly convince Benjamin Butler. I wonder what Frederick Douglass might have thought of that. At times convinced, as I'm sure he seemed aloud, that Black soldiers would get the same pay, that they'd get more than a few of their own commissions, that this was how they'd die or come home undeniable citizens, amended without exclusion. deep in the course of ages, in the solemn shades, the silent continents. If in a dance of blood, I mean the sheer turns of phrase the man would draw out for those who showed up to hear. And in the most distressing colors, if the prostrate form, the uncovered head, the cringing attitude, the bated breath, swift and zealous, if fitted through their sentences, radical and determined, though if duly convicted, if the din of business and peace among them, the whites never lacked for a tongue, if the withered branch and the unsightly rock, if a mere speck in the life of a nation, disastrous times, if had cheap, presenting the semblance of paradise. How long have I been reading? I'll read this and then maybe I'll read one last little thing from bottom row. This time. This is kind of where I get, I kind of start the book with bottom rail on top of the phrase and the anecdote. I won't go into detail here, but this is where I kind of get back into it and look at all the versions of this anecdote, all of which are essentially false and kind of put words in people's mouths in a funny way to serve different purposes on both sides of the war, both sides of the argument, if you will. This is called This Time. Not a poem, but given old masters down the river, fenced in. Nothing but a bleak sandbar, 1868. Not a poem, but given dragooned old boys beneath the Negro's heel. Oh shame, where's thy blush? Not a poem, but given a bit of white meat, and one fatherland's heard tell of it, for no offense at all that anyone could discover. Not a poem, but that ancient now massa lockdown given hell of an uppity fatherland's business. Or given whatever white lie of it, let my people go, 1886. Not a poem, but the ways the times have found us equal companions in death. Until we today have done our part fighting it, 1987. Not a poem, but given the storm so long, chalked up to PBS. Sweet to greet the old fatherlands shackled with the rest, at last, and yet more from the Ken Burns in the classroom collection. Not a poem, but the bottom rail on top, moving on up and still the same old fence, all the evils of that evil day, 1901. Not a poem, but young gifted fatherlands, and no reruns, brother, and let my people living just enough, the same fucking again power, Lord. Not a poem, but when you come home, say it loud, I'm but a train a-coming, endless days, and just like a river I've, Lord, I feel like running. Not a poem, but I'm close to the edge. Not a poem, and when it hit you feel no pain, Lord, and never get tired. Oh yes, not a poem, you don't need no baggage. Not a poem, streets of gold, thank you, thank you. Not a poem, unless... And then one little last thing. I feel like this poem was kind of constructed to be a kind of like, kind of explain what I was doing formally with Dream of No One But Myself. I do a lot of things, which about myself, it's kind of all over the place. It's kind of a coordinated mess to kind of show the coordinated mess of family sometimes, so not always, but sometimes. And I set out to do that, and I kind of did that, but mostly I wrote a poem about my father dying, as will happen, as will happen. This is called The Plot. Won't let your bad self let go of your old debt. Tiring of your old self. Won't let your maid bed. Let your bad blood, let your grown debt get that grown self to sleep. The what the fuck I meant, and that slump long wind clapping. Spit and storm mean out my slow will. Head a drum out the old lift. Home want my slow chill. Say goodbye to me. Or ghost off in the burning. 'Cause the minute I burnt it, we were together again. Palm pleated in the pomade. All blue magic guarantee of our broke-ass small pack wave. Already too dark to see, and that indigo shimmer shade, and already our old bloodied teeth, our old flesh in a braid. Singing my angry maybe dad's bad pentameter way. Oh, I get so carsick, I grieve. Brown bag, the lowing heat. The whole palpable filly rides all the way to the surface. His old value human gift. Dust in a pine can. 6 years in the Delaware, I ain't ever getting back. No plot. Ever safe from anyone. Too late to help or stop. Letting what I lost be what I lost. Thank you.